morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's meeting of Prosperous Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Today's date is the 10th of November and the time is now 10 o'clock. First item on the agenda is apologies.
Thank you, Chair. I have received apologies from Councillor Hussain.
And we've received apologies from Councillor Ward. His clutch has gone on his car, so he's stuck between Ashbourne and here somewhere. Okay, we'll move on to item 2, which is the declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest that they need to declare on any of the agenda items today? Take that as no. Item 3, the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of October. Do we see those as a true record? Councillor? Okay, Councillor Hudson's apologies appear to be missing. Anything else? No? We're happy to sign those as a true record then with Councillor Hudson's apologies. Okay. Okay, we'll move straight on to item 4, which is the Staffordshire Local Area SEND Revisit Inspection and SEND Accelerated Progress Plan for the next 6 months. Councillor Price, over to you.
Good morning, everybody, and good morning, Chair. So as you will see in the report, we received the SEND Local Area Revisit Inspection in January. The report is part of the appendix. The report recognised the improvements across the local area, but also recognised that we still had much more to do. Sufficient progress had made in addressing 6 of the 8 significant weaknesses identified in our initial inspection. As a result, the Department for Education required the local area to produce an accelerated progress plan. Again, it was part of the appendix or appendices in your pack. This focused on the 2 key areas to improve the quality of co-production and the quality of education, health and care plans. The APP sets out the 3 big ticket items that require enhanced planning, management and resourcing. These are across cutting strategic activities that are designed to drive the accelerated change required and ensure the change is embedded into the system. And these are a strategy for special provision, a developed education, health and care needs assessment pathway, and a co-production work stream working with both parents and carers as well as children and young people. The Department for Education and the National Health Service England undertook the 6-month review at the end of September, and this again recognised the further progress in addressing the 2 areas as well as continuing to develop the other areas of SEND. As you will see from the letter, the work continues and we are currently in the design phase around the review of specialist provision, which we would like to bring back to this committee at some point in summer 2023. We do recognise, however, that there is still much to do, as well as challenges and pressures on resources, but the work continues to improve the service for some of our most vulnerable children and young people. So just to set that into context, we have nearly 7,000 children and young people up to the age of 25 with an educational healthcare plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Do members have any questions or comments? Councillor Hudson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, I haven't declared an interest in this item because although I work in education, I don't work in Staffordshire, I work in Derbyshire. But obviously, I've got quite a lot of experience in this area of education. And it's very important that we chase up this EHC issue because the EHC plans are very, very important. And often the schools can't put into place the support for the children until they're done. So it's very important, and the funding often isn't available either. In my experience, and so I feel that is something that we really, really need to chase up and make sure that at the next inspection report that has been addressed. And it's 2 of the 8 that haven't been fully addressed, as I understand, and I think that's very important that we get that right. Yes, I understand that sometimes the parents don't always cooperate, and I understand that sometimes the targets and outcomes are not aspirational enough, but that's down to the individual schools, I feel. It's down to the teaching staff that are supporting these children and the head, you know, the management of the school. But I really feel that it's something that we really need to get a grip with and get it sorted out, because it's very, very important.
Councillor Price, did you want to come back on that? Tim?
Yeah, totally correct. Yeah, in terms of the work, I suppose what we would say is that it's not just about education, health and care plans. That this starts as soon as a youngster has identified additional educational needs, and so the work of SEND starts at the earliest stage. And again, I know this committee, we've talked before about the SEND and inclusion hubs, which is about that early identification of needs, because our view is that the sooner that you can meet those needs, actually sometimes it de-escalates the requirement for education, health and care plans. But where a youngster does require an education, health and care plan, absolutely. The work that's taking place is about trying to ensure that all of the work around that team around the child, team around the family, takes place pre that kind of statutory process in terms of the education, health and care plan. And so that's that pathway is being developed to ensure that all of the work, all of the professionals, so the educational psychologist, all of the speech and language therapists, the health support and any social care that's required happens as that request for an education, health and care plan takes place. And so that once that plan has been agreed, all of the professionals understand and have committed to supporting the child and the family. But in terms of your comments, yeah, we absolutely agree.
Why does it take so long to get these EHC plans in place? Because, you know, sometimes you get parents are waiting months and months. What is there anything we can be done to speed up the processes, please?
Yeah, again, in terms of some of those requests, and you highlighted that important role of the education setting or the education provider. It might not be schools, which is why I'm just kind of using the education provider aspect. But it's about making sure that all of the things that have and could be done early are done. So that's around that taking a graduated approach, a graduated response to the youngster, and ensuring that everything takes place prior to an education, health and care plan before you know that decision around producing a plan is taken. And as I say, what we're working on is making sure that those professionals are right at the start of that discussion, rather than waiting for a request and then the professionals then get involved to understand and to undertake their assessments. If all of that work is pre that statutory request, then again it should reduce the time that those plans take. Jonathan?
Just to put it in context as well, I mean, the demand for educational healthcare plans is extremely high at the moment. I think we're around 6,870, Tim, am I? About right? Which is the highest number that we've ever had. So we're trying to manage that demand as well at the same time. But no, really good questions.
I think we have to acknowledge the work that's done by yourself and the teams and the SEND. It's never easy putting these interventions in place. It's never easy working with parents. My daughter is a school teacher and she says the kids are fine, it's the parents that are the problem most of the time. So I just want to relay that back, Councillor Price, that the work that has been done already and the work that will continue to be done to ensure the very best education for those that need it at the most vulnerable stages. Councillor Price?
No, I really appreciate you saying that. I have to say, as an authority, we weren't where we were supposed to be. You know, that's why we had a written statement of action, and rightly so, which was the catalyst for improvement in the SEND service at Staffordshire anyway. So I welcome that. And it is worth pointing out that the hard work that's been done by officers has helped us achieve 6 of those 8 significant areas of weakness, but we recognise we still have an awful lot of work to do around the 2 areas of weakness that we have, and behind the scenes I can assure you staff are working extremely hard to address that, whilst making sure that we still keep an eye on those other 6 areas as well, because it's quite easy to take our eye off the ball and we could end up not being where we need to be with those. So rest assured we are working extremely hard through the SEND transformation to make sure that we give a quality of service that our children and our parents do deserve, with the recognition though that we can't gold plate everything.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Any further questions or comments? Philippa?
Thank you. It mentions in the report with regards to recently recruited additional key workers, but they're not yet in post. Are they in post now?
Yep, so the additional key workers are in post now. As with every large team, there is always change, and so people move on and we recruit back into those posts. But at this point in time, yeah, we've recruited to all of the positions that we have available.
And with those people now in positions, would that mean that we work in 2 capacity, or are we still struggling?
The SEND transformation was designed around a set number of educational healthcare plans and a set amount of staff. All the staff within that structure are there. Ultimately, I do feel that we potentially will require some more capacity, and Tim and I and the team are currently working on that.
Any further comments or questions from members? No? All done? Well, thank you, Jonathan and team. We've got 3 recommendations today on this report, and just to make sure that we've noted that Councillor Price wants to bring this back to us in the summer of 2023, just for the minutes. So we've got 3 recommendations that are that we consider the contents of the local area SEND revisit inspection report published in March of this year. We consider the contents of the Department for Education and NHS England's 6-month review, dated the 10th of October, and we continue to endorse the actions set out in the accelerated progress plan. Done all those. Are we happy to move those on block? Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Price. Thank you, Tim. Always a pleasure. You're now free to leave. Can I just ask members to either turn their volume down on their laptops or just press F1, because emails pinging through every 2 seconds is a little bit disrupting. So we'll just wait for the gents at the back to get comfy. And we'll move on to item 5, which is the Household Waste Recycling Centres Forward Investment Policy Review and Reuse. Councillor Tagg.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Committee. I'm not sure that Cabinet members can get too comfy in scrutiny, but we are here today, and I'm with the officers, which you already know, and I think those people that are on the site visit earlier in the week will know of Tim and of Nick, who are sitting next to me today. So, really pleased to bring this report back to you today. Staffordshire, as we know, has 14 household waste recycling sites, which came back under County Council control in April. We've committed £5 million towards investing in improving those sites. And thank you to those members that came to the site visit on Monday, where we went to the Cannock, Burntwood and Lichfield sites, which illustrated a lot of the issues which are covered in the report, whether that's the investment that's already going into them, whether it's the improved management of sites, as we saw at the Lichfield site, or whether it's the issue with trade waste, which we saw illustrated quite dramatically at the Cannock site. Each year we welcome over 1.5 million visitors and recycle over 46,000 tonnes of waste at our household waste recycling sites. We can recycle 42 different types of material, including wood, cardboard, rubble, garden waste, glass, textiles and many more. And we know that most people who visit our sites or our residents are disposing of household waste in cars, with a small proportion disposing of household waste in vans or using a trailer. Our sites are currently open to everybody, including businesses and those that live outside of Staffordshire. The primary function for our sites is to receive household waste from Staffordshire residents. We have no statutory duty to provide disposal services to businesses and those living outside Staffordshire. And most of our neighbouring local authorities do not allow traders to access their site. In Staffordshire, businesses are charged to dispose of waste on their sites, but at the moment our prices are low compared with others, and we need to increase this to match the industry standard. At the same time, it is also difficult for our staff to distinguish which vans are residents and which are businesses, so charging is not always possible. Over time, we have seen an increased number of visitors arriving at the sites using large vehicles and vans disposing of bulky waste items, as we saw at the Cannock site on Monday. Disposal of trade waste is more expensive than disposing of household waste for the council, and this has resulted in an increase in our site's disposal costs. As taxpayers funding the service, there's a potential for considerable cost to be borne by Staffordshire residents due to the disposal of trade waste from both inside Staffordshire, but more importantly from our neighbouring authorities who don't accept that type of waste. So the paper before us today outlines the progress we've made since taking over the sites in April, and also outlines the public consultation that is proposed over trade waste disposal and introduction of a free van permit for Staffordshire residents. This would help our staff to distinguish between who's a Staffordshire resident and who are Staffordshire traders, and also those that are outside the area. So that concludes my introduction, but I'll just hand over to, I think Nick is going to be doing a brief presentation. I'm not sure we can get that on the screen for Nick.
Magic. Okay, thank you everybody for coming to the site visits. I think everybody here was on them. I hope you found it informative. Just a bit of history on the HWRCs. It's been outsourced for the last 27 years. During that period, there's been minimal investment in capital. Most of the sites have been there historically for a long time. The most recent one to move was actually the Uttoxeter. As has been previously mentioned, trade waste is a non-statutory service. It was actually implemented by one of our previous contractors, FCC, who found it as a way to increase profits for their organisation. Staffordshire County Council gained nothing from that. And what we found when taking over is there's actually been limited controls on how to take the money and control everything that's going on with trade waste. Services have been bought in-house, with the majority of the staff transferring on the 30th of March this year. And critical health and safety repair investment is required to ensure that the sites remain compliant with EA permits, and we've started work in the last 5 months on a number of these projects. So, what we were asking you to comment on is a proposal to introduce and consult on van permitting. For Staffordshire residents, we wish to use certain type of vehicles to transport household waste to the Staffordshire sites. Views and opinions are sought on proposals for commercial trade waste to include in the consultation. And finally, to consider an introduction of a short application process which allows local groups such as scouts or litter pickers or voluntary groups to get easy access to the HWRCs. At the moment, they find it very difficult. It's only schools or registered charities. Okay, examples of service we need to fund over the next 5 years. We've already got a container replacement. We had 22 new containers bought in on an exemption certificate, but we're looking now to go out for a framework agreement to call in containers as and when needed. The JCB and CATs do need replacing. We can either go down the lease option or the purchase option, leasing about 600k per annum, and a purchase including service would be about £3 million. Leak weighbridge needs changing, and if we need a new weighbridge, we'd be looking at £100,000 for a new weighbridge at any sites. There needs a fire suppression system at leak transfer station. Again, we're looking at about £250,000 for that. We're not currently going out to tender for a welding and fabrication contract to make sure that we keep the ramps maintained and container repairs so we can keep everything up and running as best we can. Leak transfer station floor needs repairing, and if we look there, that site, that photograph there is actually burnt wood. That was before. So when we went and saw it, that's what it was like before. And you can rest assured that was a very deep puddle. Very deep. Some could go swimming. A number of the sites need a lot of work going on. Examples so far, we've had Entrust going out onto the sites to look at what needs doing. For example, we reckon there needs 100k spend at Cannock, Newcastle £55,000. That's without replacement of the porter cabin. Burntwood, as you've seen there, which we've already done, which is £80,000. Biddulph £85,000 and Burton £30,000. How we propose to do this £5 million investment is the basis of the pound in, pound out principle. Please note that all this costing we've done is based on working on existing sites. If we have to move into any sites for whatever reason, that would be a completely different business case. I think when Tim showed this before in a presentation, this is the trade tonnage at the HWRC network. The blue line is Cannock. And as we can see there, the growth is actually, well, it's taken off. I think Tim, when he did his presentation, said it has increased. I think we got a different comment when we presented this last time. It's significantly increased. The thing is that this one is for the bulky waste. Again, look at Cannock. Now with these, if you look both on the previous slide and this slide, Cannock has gone up exponentially, but if you also look at the other slides, you can see that both Stafford and Lichfield are starting to follow a similar pattern. So, what's the impact of that on bulky waste? If we look at the bulky waste tonnage in 2017-18, it was about just over 1,500 tonnes. In 21-22, it had actually gone up to nearly 9,000 tonnes. It's 8,826. That shows an increase of over 7,000 tonnes, which as a cost for disposal is nearly £750,000 extra cost for disposal. The trade waste, which you saw, we've been taking some weights now we've taken over, and the average weight we've had so far, which is a running total and does change, is about 1.37 tonnes per load. We were charging £81 a load. We've now increased that up to £100 per load. We've done some investigation because what we find is most of the people who are coming on the sites are actually doing house removals. I think you saw that when you were on site. If you look at what prices people are paying for that, it's about £400 that they're paying for it to get rid of it. We also looked at commercial disposal outlets throughout Staffordshire. Looked at one in the north, one in the centre and one in the south to see what their gate fees were. They're charging anything between £140 to £175 per tonne. We've also we introduced a system called Fasara on site when we first took over, which is it's a system for management data and everything. It helps with waste disposal, all the tickets, which basically all the duty of care things that we need to do. But one of the things it also does, we've got the lads on site when trade come in to record where they've come from, etc. If you look on the pie chart on the left, that shows where the trade has come from. During July, we had 231 visits from businesses which are outside Staffordshire. 103 were inside, and of the 378, this is where we've still got training with the operatives that we didn't get the data we wanted. But if we look at that and we prorate it, it looks as though 2/3 of the traders that are coming onto our sites from that information are from outside Staffordshire. They can have a knock-on effect because sometimes if the sites are busy or whatever, the larger ones, people move to other sites. That photograph there on the right-hand side was in the Evening Sentinel. And basically, we had to stop taking people on the site at Stone because the site got full because a load of traders turned up all in one go. It's interesting to say that Stoke-on-Trent residents banned from the Staffordshire site. Nobody was banned. It was just we couldn't operate, and also it affected Staffordshire residents from Stone and the local area. So, proposed policy changes comment. The primary function, as already mentioned by Simon, for HWRC service is to receive household waste. Council has no statutory duty for the provision of tipping and disposal of commercial waste. The majority of residents can use cars for disposal. Last data we had was about 6% came in vans. Why do we need to change? Over the last 12 months, site staff have had challenging tasks in distinguishing between householders using an employer-borrowed hired van. It causes issues when they're challenging. If they challenge, sometimes get abuse back, shall we say. It can be quite a difficult task for them. There's been a significant increase in both bulky and trade waste over the last 3 years, which is particularly evident at Cannock. And we need to control the use of the Council's HWRC network to minimise both operational and financial pressures. Van and trailer use. We want to introduce and consult on van permitting, and this consultation will focus on whether residents think van permitting should be introduced, how many visits per year should be allowable under the van permitting system, and the opportunity for residents to raise any concerns they have if we do introduce van permitting, and any other suggestions that this committee would like to put forward in the consultation. With regard to the trade waste, we're proposing 3 options. First one is that we restrict it to Staffordshire waste businesses only, or Staffordshire and non-Staffordshire businesses, but we restrict to the sites where they can operate, mainly to the 3 larger sites, one in the north, one in the middle and the south. As we've seen previously, the smaller sites, if they get hit, and I think you saw this at Lichfield, it isn't a big site, and if you get a lot of vehicles on there, it can cause operational issues and not a good experience for residents using the sites. And the final one is to continue with the existing arrangements. In all 3 cases, though, I must emphasise that we believe that the charges must go up, as we've seen the costs for the disposal. The final one that we want to talk to you about is obviously with this one with regard to, at the moment, the current policy is restricted to FEC schools and registered charities. We want to open that up if we can, so that people like litter picking groups, scouts, charity events, anything such as that can have access to the HWRC. We don't want to make it difficult for people to use these facilities. So what we're proposing there is that we would have a system where it's signed off that 2 officers agree that this can be done, and an agreement is put in place for that charity group to continue and have easy access and no hindrance in accepting. What we would say, though, is if a facility is using theirs and making money, for example, if it's a village hall and they have something and they take in finance gain, that waste would actually be classed as commercial waste, and so would go down the commercial waste route. The final thing is that there's a number of other policies that exist for the HWRC network. We will be refreshing all of those and bringing them up to date with current statutory and operational procedures. And the main thing I think people will be concerned about is fly tipping. Based on previous experience we've seen then, other countries, councils do not anticipate increase in fly tipping due to changes in the policy. However, we will work closely with the districts and boroughs to support them if there are any increases in fly tipping. I think a similar process was done when COVID kicked in, that we worked with them to help if there was an increase. Many waste disposal authorities have either banned trade waste from the HWRC facilities or put in controls to manage it. We're not aware of that that has resulted in any increases in fly tipping. The introduction of fly tipping, introduction of van permits only limits the number of visits by that vehicle. Residents aren't restricted from using other household vehicles to visit facilities. So if there's a household that's got a van, a people carrier and a car, it's just the restrictions on the people carrier that will be in place. They can visit in the car as many times as they want to. If we look at the traders, depending on the consultation and what the results come back with, if traders from outside are not allowed in, they'll be collecting waste from their locality. So they would dispose of the waste either legally or illegally in their local area because they want to get on to the next job. They wouldn't travel all this way just to dispose or fly tip. We will work closely with the waste collection authority to monitor, and as said previously, we will give financial help if needed, if there is an increase. Following the consultation and the due process, if whatever's introduced, what we would be doing would be a period where we'd not implement it, but we'd be communicating, put comms out, letting everybody know. For example, and if it's businesses who are outside, and for example, if outside Staffordshire is agreed, they would have a period of time to change their operational role, duties, and how they actually perform their job. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Graham?
I've got 4 comments to make. One is, I think the tradeway should be restricted to the 3 largest. I think a load of vans turning up at a small site is just not acceptable. Most places that I've ever used, other than Staffordshire, have required proof of residency. And I really think that if we're going to go down this route, we should have proof of residency for people turning up, even in a car or 4x4, because people can pop across the border. You don't know that they're Staffordshire residents or Derbyshire residents, or, you know, goodness, it could be even Birmingham residents, because they want to dump their stuff. So I absolutely think that if you want to make this work, you're going to have proof of residency, and we could issue cards for that or something like that. I don't know. It should be something very simple to apply for, and just have a name and address, and that you are permitted to go to a Staffordshire waste site. Talking about communication, I think the most important thing about this communication is that we have to change. Therefore, we have to have these costs in that communication. It's really important that we are facing millions of pounds of costs, and that's why we're doing this. It's not to penalise people, it's to pay for this. And the last one is on trade. I do think that if we had some way of... We make money out of about 2 items, possibly... certainly at the moment we're making money out of cardboard, we make money out of aluminium, and perhaps the third one is other metals. I don't know whether we make much money out of other metals, but we certainly make money out of aluminium and cardboard. And I think if a van turned up full of cardboard or full of aluminium cans, particularly if it was from a scout group, something like that, regardless of whether it was for a fete, then if it was all... If they'd packaged the cardboard up, such as baling it, or put aluminium cans, crush them and put them in a big box, then I think that we should say, okay, we're not going to charge you the £200 that we want to charge you. We'll charge you 50 quid or 30 quid. Something appropriate. I mean, I'm sure that you guys can come up with something appropriate, but I think if that's in the communication... So, hang on, we're not penalising. You know, it's the sort of thing that people will say, okay, yeah, I accept all that. And I think it makes it much more acceptable. And that's it. Other than that, excellent work. But I'm just trying to help you make it work, not to impede you in any way. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Chairman. I thought the visit on... what day? Monday was very illuminating, because I think when you see the difference between Cannock and, for example, Lichfield, you realise what the problems are and how we're starting to consider those problems. One point that I made, which I think is already on the work programme to be dealt with, was the historic quality of signage. When people have got small items like electric light bulbs and small batteries, the signage, for example, at Lichfield was absolutely appalling. You didn't know where to put anything. And I think that that's something that's in hand to be put right. One of the things that gives me most concern that I'd like to know a little more about, when we talk about the introduction of charges, and incidentally I do agree that we should stop people coming in from outside areas, when we start looking at fly tipping, I mean, we suffer very badly in a rural area with fly tipping. it's not going to reduce the amount of fly tipping by charging, but I do have a concern, and I note the points that are made that it's not seen that they're expecting to increase the amount of fly tipping that we have. Not too sure whether I'm convinced about that, and perhaps you might like to say a little bit more about fly tipping. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Tagg, did you want to come in, or one
Yes,
of the
thank you.
gentlemen?
Yeah, on the points that have been raised so far, yeah, I think that fly tipping point is really crucial for us. And I think something as the officer had a dedicated slide to that deliberately to try and reassure people. I think when we're looking at the people from outside of the county who might be coming from Birmingham, you might even be from Cheshire East up in the north, or any of the other counties that don't accept this type of waste. I think you know, they are going to find out pretty sharpish that they're not going to be able to dump unless they obviously do it locally. I think that they will then not travel all the way to Staffordshire and then won't obviously then risk fly tipping. I think one of the key things is communications here, which Councillor Hutton has indicated. I think a lead-in time for this will be key, so that those people know that they haven't got to travel all the way up to from Walsall or wherever up to Staffordshire to one of the sites in Cannock. Cannock seems to be the favourite when they know they're not going to be able to dump. So they will, if they're going to fly tip, they will do it more locally from where they've picked up the materials. I think that proof of ID is something officers can take away. I know that from living near to the city of Stoke that they operate a system like that and have done for many years on varying levels, you know, very sort of ad hoc or a very prescriptive where you have to show an ID. I think clear comms, coming back to that, what you mentioned, Councillor Hutton, is essential to this and everything we do really, but for this particularly, and on the tradeaway side and the fly tipping. So I think it's really important that we have that, and we will have that in the programme. The monitorisation of the streams of waste, I will ask Nick or Tim to come in to give more detail on that. But the final bit was the signage, which a good point made by David there, and I think as you've seen from the Lichfield site, you know, when the signage is correct, it makes it easy for our residents to use, and I think also makes it quicker for them to do the dumping of the materials they wish on the site if it's clear and indicating where they need to go, which enables them to move on and somebody else to come in, which cuts down on queuing. So signage on all our sites is really important, and you can see what benefit we can get from that by what we've done on the Lichfield site. But I'll hand over to either Nick or Tim to talk about the monitorisation of the streams we received.
Thanks, Simon. I suppose my point really on the monitorisation, and it does sort of touch into fly tipping as well. For me, all the policies we're looking to change is about trying to change behaviours, and I think absolutely, if a trader comes in and is as willing to split his load down, he's got more valuable material rather than the cost materials, then there should be some sort of mechanism to sort of reward that, because we want people to recycle more, and it sort of, that behaviour change also comes across into the fly tipping, because it's antisocial behaviour. We need to stop it. Staffordshire's really well sort of covered in HWRCs, so we'd like to make, you know, we want to try and make it as easy as possible, and trying to make the process of using the HWRCs more efficient, more smoother, will hopefully try and drive more waste into the right places rather than into the wrong places, and encourage that fly tipping. So that's what we would try and do, and absolutely I think it's something that we'd want to look at going forwards.
Did you want to come back, David?
If I may, Chairman, one of the concerns that I think I have really, if we do end up with an increase in fly tipping, that it puts pressures onto the local council, not onto Staffordshire. I'm thinking particularly in my own area, where we recently had a canister of hazardous waste dumped. I don't know whether that could have been taken to the Lichfield centre, whether it would have been acceptable. It's neither here nor there at the moment. The concern was that was there for Lichfield District Council to dispose of, and if we do have an increase in fly tipping, then it's not this council that carries the can. It passes on to the local council.
I think the officers said that if there was an increase in fly tipping in certain areas, that they would work with that local council or parish to remove that. I'm not correct in that, aren't I, Nick? That is what he said.
Simon, yeah.
No,
Yes,
Nick
that is
said
okay.
it.
Nick, sorry, Nick said it. Yeah, I'll come in. I think there was a good... When the sites were closed because of COVID, obviously there was a fear that there would be fly tipping as a result of that, but that didn't occur. But there was a mechanism in place where we were going to assist the districts if there was any of that. I think I'll just pass over to Tim on the issue to do with that canister, because I'm not sure whether we would be accepting those and they would be fly tipped anyway, which has nothing to do with our waste recycling side.
Just a point really on fly tipping and how it works. With the WCAs of the district and boroughs and ourselves, we will cover the cost of disposal, and most all WCAs have access to the HWLCs if they collect any street litter or any fly tipping, and they can bring it into us, and we take the cost of disposal. On certain issues and certain items of fly tipping that are quite outside the norm, we work very closely together to come up with the best solution for recovery. And that may be getting specialists out to collect it. Certainly, certain types of material won't come direct into the sites, and we will arrange with the district and boroughs to move them straight off, and the costs are sort of divvied up accordingly. But again, it will be something that will be monitored. We would hope it doesn't increase, and we'll be working with our district and borough colleagues to monitor that and make sure we're having conversations so there's no unnecessary burden put on anywhere that shouldn't be. But fundamentally, for me, the fly tipping issue, really, we need to try and find out what's causing it, who's doing it, and try and stop it at source rather than dealing with the aftermath of it.
Chairman, could I just mention, as a compliment to the local councils, quite often when I come to meetings here, I report waste that's been dumped and fly tipped. By the time I go back home again, along the same route, it has actually been collected and the site cleared. And so I think that our partners in the district and boroughs do a fabulous job in clearing fly tipping. It's just such a disgusting thing that people do. And I hope everything is done that we possibly can to discover who it was that actually dumped it, and that we deal with it as vigorously as we possibly can. Thank you, Chairman.
Bernard?
Thank you, Chairman. South Staffordshire Council, they charge for green waste for the households that they represent. So there's an awful lot of examples I think you can get from the South Staffordshire Council, and particularly on fly tipping, because that is the bane of our lives in South Staffordshire. And you'll be able to find out over the couple of years or so since they've been charging for green waste, whether fly tipping has increased or whether it's gone down. And they do put cameras out there to try to catch people, and they do catch people, and they do prosecute them and charge them. Only last night at the parish council at Cheslin Hay, I was asked to, because they knew I was coming here today, to check if someone turns up with a car pulling something behind it with two wheels, does that mean that they're not allowed to put green waste into Cannock? That's what they're asking, because they said the guy was turned away because he had a large load. But what he quoted was, because it's a different vehicle than just a car, then he was turned away on that basis. I said I'd find out.
Thank you. Just I'll hand over to Nick for the detailed question about Cannock, but on the overall issue of fly tipping, and you mentioned garden waste, I can't talk for South Staffs, but I know that from Newcastle Borough, when we brought in charged garden waste collections, it was flatlined on fly tipping. It actually went down the first year, but that was because of the first COVID start to kick in, and activity was reduced, obviously, generally in the building trade, because what we usually get are these contractors that go off and do garden clear-ups and stuff like that. That wasn't happening during COVID as part of house renovations. So I think it's flatlined, so I can't see there was any increase in fly tipping because of the garden waste collections being charged for in Newcastle. I don't know about South Staffs, obviously, but I'll hand over to Nick for the issue to do with particular trailers, etc.
Thank you. With regard to trailers, single axle trailers are allowed on. If it's a twin axle, it isn't. The material itself, the garden waste, can be disposed of. This is one of the things that we're looking at when we said we're reviewing some of the other policies. These are some of the operational things that we need to change and to look at. So at the moment, a single axle trailer is allowed on sites. Twin axle trailers aren't.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is, and you'll probably address it later, is that it's uniformity across the county. So if you go to your Toxicity, which is a fairly new recycling place, the signage is very good and it's pretty good. So once we get uniformity across the county, I think that will help. The other thing is I welcome the fact that 4x4s are classed as cars, but if you go to your Toxicity, because I've got bars on my Discovery, he has to open the barrier, and I've been told I can only go in twice a year. So, well, that's not on, because it's a car. Unfortunately, I can't keep taking the boat bars off. And the other thing is, which is positive, is that the price of commodities has gone up. So our recycling we should be earning more money over the next year. We discussed it at East Staffs last night, and the price of commodities will probably go up for about 12 to 2 years, but we understand it will come down. So there will be some extra income coming in, hopefully, to the county, which will offset some of the costs that we will incur.
Any further comments, gents?
We talked about the pound in, pound out principle, didn't we?
Yeah.
So that will feed into that of the the investment based on where we can raise income or make savings. I think nothing further to add really, other than I think welcome your comments there about the Utoxeter site, and the idea is to get all of the sites up to that standard. I come from Newcastle, as you're probably aware, and we have the Leasit site, which is probably one of the worst accessible ones on the entire network, and we've got plans to do some work there to improve access to that particularly, and that's all part of the taking it back in-house, improving them, keeping all 14 of them. I mean, there's no plans to remove or close any of these sites. There has been in the past and campaigns one way or another many years ago, but each of the sites is worthy of investment and is worthy of increasing the amount of material we bring in and recycle. I'll just finally say about the reuse option, of course, as we saw at the Cannock Centre, that there was a reuse shop. We want to try and have as many of those across the county as well, because that's an important part of that recycling, isn't it? That things don't go to the waste to energy plant or in other areas to landfill, but we do reuse them, and they get used by people, particularly in the cost of living crisis. There's a lot of things that can be reused and given to people who are most in need.
Thank you, Simon. I was just about to speak. You can come in a minute, Bernard. Just wait 1 second. Just on the Cannock site, on 27C, it says that the 50% of the traders using the Cannock site between May and June did not provide any business information. So going forwards, we will be able to get that information, and when we go out to consultation and potentially only allow Staffordshire residents to use our sites, that will alleviate that issue, won't it? That it will make it easier for residents to then be able to use the site. Our laptop's just gone off now. And the other thing I was going to mention, when we did the site visit, when you were sat with us at the back on the back naughty seat, Nick, it was mentioned about volunteers that maybe get paid from parishes to do council work. Will that be included in the extension of the schools and charities? I think it was Sam that was with us that said about they have a guy that does work on behalf of the parish, and they pay them, but then where does he get rid of his rubbish, and what category would it come under?
Yeah, we would certainly look at that as part of the ones where it's a charity and that side of it.
I think we've all got one of those across the county somewhere. That in Tamworth we don't have any parishes, so it's down to the borough council, but we have lots of volunteers that do take on council projects just to get it done, because rather than go through the system. So and again, just to say thank you for the site visits. It was very easy to see that Cannock was obviously a very, very busy site. Lichfield has had the work done now and will be a busy site, although be very smaller. And I did have some concerns about how much trade waste you were actually going to get into Lichfield. Maybe if it was on a Sunday when everyone else is trying to get rid of household stuff. But I think you're right from the offset. It's about education and changing behaviours. We all have a recycling bin for cardboard, paper, cans, glass. We all have a black bin for general rubbish. Most people have a garden waste bin, and all councils across Staffordshire now charge for that. So there isn't really an excuse for you not to do it properly at home. And I think the majority of the recycling centres or the household waste centres is bulkier stuff that you can't put in your bin. You've had a kitchen done or something, and you've got loads of big boxes of cardboard or whatever. So I do commend the work that's happened since we've taken this back in house. So thank you to the officers, Simon and your team. And I look forward to see what happens going forwards. And I don't know whether you want to bring this back to us to just give us some, because it's only been 6 months. It's still in its infancy. I think we need to have a look maybe in another 6 months' time and look at the tonnage, look at the trade waste, and obviously after we've gone out to consultation and what came back from residents and businesses that we consult with. Are members happy with that to come back in 6 months' time? Are you guys happy to come back to us in 6 months, maybe, or sooner, if you've got that information?
That's fine, Chair. I think that's okay, isn't it?
So, if there are no further comments... Oh, sorry, Bernard, you wanted to come back?
Chairman, what I wanted to do was to try and reassure about charging. Now, when South Staffordshire started to apply a charge, for the first 12 months, we had quite a problem because obviously people don't want to pay. And so we got through the first 12 months, and when that 12 months was finished, we really have had a very smooth, no problem at all. People have accepted it, and not only that, they've not only just accepted it, they can't do without it. And so consequently, I mean, to the other councillors here, if your councils want to charge, be ready to have a problem for the first 12 months, and then nothing after that.
Thank you, Bernard. Are there any... Pippa?
Sorry. Just quickly, with regards to the schools and charities, if there could be something specific that we could send out to our local groups as members when that's agreed and approved, that would be really helpful, because that would probably be one of the most frequently asked questions that we would get.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think as we talked about the comms, communications around this, and post-consultation, if we move ahead with these plans, that is a big part of this. And also pushing the reuse option as well, really, to make people more aware of that as well, and that there are shops on some of the sites where they can go and pick up an item which they can still get lots of use out of that somebody else has brought to the centre.
Okay, if there are no further comments or questions, we've got 5 recommendations from this report. Do you want me to read them all out, or are you happy that you've read them and we can move them on block? They are quite lengthy, Simon. Simon likes lots of recommendations. So they are there. We have read them, so we've moved on block. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time on Monday, to you and the guys on site as well. And I do believe we now have our first female recruit, don't we, Nick?
Yes, she was an agency, and hopefully she'll be starting with us.
Brilliant. We're
Based at
moving
Stafford.
forward into the 21st century. Thank you, gentlemen. Simon, unfortunately, you've got to stay. So we'll move swiftly on to the next item on the agenda, which is digital infrastructure in Staffordshire updates. Simon Tagg.
Wait for the team to come in. We're having to swap a personnel. They're outside, yeah, and then I'll do the introduction. Okay, thank you, Chair. My second item to bring today, and this is an update on the digital strategy and the rollout. And Idris, who you've seen before at the meeting, and also Tony as well have joined me for this. And Idris has a brief presentation, which they'll go on to after my introductory remarks. And I think I've also circulated a letter that I sent to the Minister. You'll be pleased to know is still in position, sent on the 18th of October, and she's still, I believe, the Minister for Secretary of State for Media, Data and Digital Structure, which I think is something which Idris is going to cover in his presentation. And it's about the news that we didn't go forward in the first phase of the BD UK rollout. But I can say that a lot is happening locally and organically, which Idris will touch on. And a business that did bid, which wasn't taken forward, is doing some work across the county on rolling out some of this, and also in some of the areas that are most worst to be connected. I think there are things happening across the county in Moorlands, particularly where our team are helping to get people connected in hard to reach areas. Also the Giga Hubs, which we talked about at our last meeting, are moving forward as well, and that is to get schools and parish halls and doctor surgeries, etc., connected as hubs, so that we can then feed out the faster connections in communities, particularly hard to reach communities. Working with the Borough Council in Newcastle on the town deal Wi-Fi proposals, which could bring a lot of sort of benefit to Newcastle Town Centre, but also a lot of ideas and learning and ways forward for how we connect other areas to free Wi-Fi systems, which can help businesses and also those people that are digitally excluded as well, and also a lot about the 5G rollout, which I think Idris will using street furniture example to roll out 5G connectivity. But I'll leave it there, and obviously asked Idris to do his presentation. I think if you press a button, the first screen will come on.
Red button there so everybody can hear me. Thanks, Simon. Morning, everybody. Okay, hopefully you've all had a chance to read the report, and there were some associated slides. You should never start off a presentation with an apology, but I quoted Liz Truss on the slide. She was PM when I put the slides through. I also had Newcastle Town Council on there, and obviously speaking of the town council, I was also referring to the town deal that is going on there. So there we are. That's hopefully the last of my apologies for the presentation. From my last report, I think the main thing is that nothing has changed in terms of the long goal. Our aspiration remains to get 100% gigabit connectivity for the residents and businesses in Staffordshire by 2030. So from that perspective, nothing has really changed. The Superfast service, and that's been going on, our Superfast program has been going on since, 2012, 2013. And that's 30 to 80 megabits, the kind of broadband that people tend to be buying at the moment. At the moment, that has 97% coverage in the county and about 80% take-up, which is quite good, I think. And then in terms of the gigabit, just to give you an idea of the difference in sizes, you know, a gigabit is 1,000 megabits, so you can see it's a real massive change from 30 to 80. That's sitting at about 61.5% in the county at the moment. So we're well on scheme, if you like, to achieve our targets. But the bit that is really hard is the outlying areas, such as Simon mentions, the Staffordshire Moorlands, areas in Cannock and South Staffordshire. So those are the areas that hard to reach and very hard to reach areas. As Simon mentioned, since our last report, BD UK have completed a procurement exercise where they determined that there was no market interest in meeting these hard-to-reach areas in Staffordshire, despite the fact that up to 17 different suppliers showed interest. One organisation put in 255,000 premises that they were interested in serving, all of which were rejected by BD UK. That organisation has already started digging up the roads in Burntwood and has submitted 7 different permits in Stafford. So, as Simon said, we've written to the Minister to be saying we need BD UK to relook at this, and we're continuing with those discussions with them. I think we're also looking to be supporting communities, as Simon mentioned, with the voucher support. I've got that kind of report in there that talks where the amount of premises that we've been able to support, and I'm just looking for my numbers here, 83,400 since we started with the Superfast programme. So those are premises that would not otherwise have had access to the Superfast programme. And also in the hard-to-reach areas, which is where you may be aware that the council supported with £1 million worth of additional vouchers. 18 communities, that's 1,000 premises in these hard-to-reach areas, have already been delivered. We've got 8 communities, which is 996 premises that are in delivery, and another 8 communities with 989 premises that are approved and awaiting deliveries in the very hard-to-reach areas. And that's just to give you an idea that we are concerned with those that have not been able to get access before. We're also then going to be looking at alternative technologies. So one of the areas that we're looking at is Hollingsclough area. When we've previously looked at that, just to give you an example, that the premises in the Hollingsclough area would require a voucher of about £11,000 per premise to get access. The school there were challenged with £67,000 worth of additional construction charges to get connectivity. These are quite large figures for either the government or the local authority providing, so we're trying to find alternative ways such as fixed wireless access to deliver service into these areas. But I believe there's a meeting going on tomorrow with Karen Bradley and Councillor Heath. Yep. So again, just a good piece of work going on. We think we continue to encourage investment by these 17 alternative network providers, and we're doing a lot of work in introducing them to our highways team. Those of you aware about reinstatement and defending our road assets will know that we try and get these alternative network providers to understand that they can't just dig and leave, and that we need to be leaving, encouraging the community to understand what we're also trying to do. With that in mind, we have a new Gigafast website. That Gigafast website, as well as trying to advise communities and businesses where gigabit access is going to be, is also there to be trying to also give them advice in terms of security, those that could potentially have social tariffs. I think I note in the report that only 2% of the population, this is the UK population, not necessarily Staffordshire, who are eligible for social tariffs have taken them up. So again, that is something in these hard times where people who are finding it difficult to pay for their broadband could apply for social tariffs. So if you've got any constituents who are looking for those sorts of savings, again, on the Gigafast website, they can pick that up. We continue to work on encourage the identification and the wider mobile coverage of 4G and 5G into county. We are currently having discussions with organisations that are looking to use our street furniture. One of the good bits of news about that around Lamppost is that they will pay £300 in order to put 4G or 5G access onto the lampposts. That's in addition to any costs of providing additional power. From my perspective, and when this comes to light, we'll bring it to the committee, but from my perspective, it's better to be using our lamppost than be putting up different poles, right? And that will again help us move into, into what I'd call the 21st century and allowing fast access, because the forecast is that we will have 1 million devices per square kilometre in urban environment trying to get access to the internet. So we need to have that kind of bandwidth available. And again, as a final piece, we continue to work with other digital programmes just to try and help support them and show that this technology is available and enable them to be moving forward. I've got some examples, but I won't go into that. I've probably bored you enough already. So that's my my report, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Idris. It's always good to have you here. Are there any questions from members? Philip?
Yeah, I may be wrong, but I'm disappointed that, so in my street, BT came along and they've got the channels ready, so they could put their cables down channels. They wouldn't let Lila put their cables down their channels, so they've now dug up my road and my footpaths. It seems silly how, you know, why couldn't we have some sort of agreement to do that? The other thing is that I've noticed that we really do need to get a grip with when they're digging our roads and pavements up. I've got a third of your Toxeter at a standstill at the moment. Residents are going nuts. So poor old David Williams and myself go through it every day. I know the long-term gain is worth the short-term pain, but unfortunately, and it's often that residents are coming along and nothing's happening, but the road's all dug up and it's all, and there's traffic lights there, and we just can't go anywhere. And as I say, this last week it's been really bad, and the other thing is the cost. I'm glad to hear now that residents can apply for a grant towards it, because I inquired with the local people about what their costs were, and it's quite a significant cost to connect up, plus the monthly rental. So that's good. So I represent New Toxeter as a county councillor, but I also represent a rural area as a borough councillor. So Marginton, I think, has been a big take-up. But Draycote said they couldn't really get involved now, and Hanbury, I don't think much is happening there at all. So it's nice to know that we're looking at the rural areas, to increase that. And I think you're going to get, well, the amount of work that's happening around my urban division in New Toxeter, I think you're going to get there before 2030, because they're just digging up everywhere at the moment. But we really need to make sure that they communicate with our network highways, because there was an instance where we just laid a new path and then Lila came along and dug it all up. So of course that caused me an embarrassment again, and that shouldn't have happened. But the positive side is it's really good work, and I'm sure that in the future that we really will gain from it. Thank you.
Simon? I
think you raise a point which is shared by a lot of members. I've had those sort of issues up in Newcastle and all over the place. But I think, if David Williams was here and if he had any hair, he'd be pulling it out sometimes over this. But I know he is working closely with the Highways team to ensure that some of this is more coordinated. The worst possible thing would be for the County Council to resurface a pavement and then these guys to come along and dig it up to put in, which is it's essential infrastructure really we're talking about here. And I think it's timetabling and also making sure that operators that are working with other operators, so we don't get two people coming at different times to dig up a street. But is there anything you can add to that, Idris?
Yeah, just a small point. They should be able to use the BT ducting. Because there's something called PIA where OpenReach should be allowing access to those things. So you might just want to check that particular fact. Lila Connect are obviously the front end of VX Fibre. We've been having conversations with both VX Fibre and our Highways team to try and mitigate some of this. But because of permitted development, they're allowed to dig these things up, but the Highways team should be enforcing, I think, full width reinstatement if VX Fibre are digging up the roads, or any of the providers are digging up the roads. I take that point, they should be doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going on about the BT because outside my house I have BT ducting, and they came along one morning and put all the cables through with all the BT guys. And then Lila came the next day and dug my pavement up. and going back, I mean, I've had to have Highways inspectors out 5 times for some areas because of the quality of the reinstatement of the roads and what's going on.
Thank you. Graham?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. It'd be great if you could reissue the thing on for people who perhaps can't afford broadband, if you could reissue it to councillors in a way that we can then stick it back onto our social media sites. that would be great, just as a reminder, particularly with everybody moaning about the cost of everything. So that would be a bit of good news that we can give out. My second point is the gigabit voucher scheme. I live in rural Newcastle. I've got lots of my neighbours run rural businesses, and the only provider is OpenReach or through a mobile provider. And well, one of my neighbours is a farmer, and he says if the television's on and we want to watch something on a digital channel, we can't use our phones. It's that bad. So perhaps a reissue of the gigabit voucher scheme in the rural, in the areas where it will do the most good, such as Moorlands, Newcastle Rural, parts of Cannock, I think in Cannock Chase, and you know all the areas. But I just think that a reissue of that would be timely and would go down well with residents, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Councillor Smith. David.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of points. Firstly, I'd be interested to know whether where services are provided via overhead cables, whether we are actually proposing at some sort of stage to replace those with underground services. I mean, I live in a rural area. If we were to end up with an improved service, then we've got, 8 or 10 houses, all very well spread out. I can understand the argument that it wouldn't be economically viable to improve that service, but it's still a case that it needs to be improved at some time. The second point that I was looking at was particularly the point that's raised in item 3 in the report, and I appreciate these are national figures, not necessarily Staffordshire figures, but if only 36% of over 65s have a smartphone, do I assume from that only 36% have access to the internet? In which case, we as a council keep turning around to people and saying, you've got to go on the internet to do this, that and the other. I live in a village with a high percentage of elderly people, many of whom don't have access to the internet. We've got to look at, and something I perhaps want to raise with the chairman separately from this, we can't look at how we're improving our internet services without looking at how we're going to handle in a better way communications within our county. As at this moment, most areas don't have newspapers anymore, and so we don't have an effective form of communication. Yes, we've got Lichfield Live and all sorts of services that are provided, but if you don't have access to the internet, you don't get access to those services and you don't know what's going on. And so I think that you're doing a great job in how we're trying to improve the service, but I don't think in terms of councils, not just this council, that we're looking at how we can better improve communications with people. I'm not sure that we're going to improve dramatically, apart from people who pop their clogs and we move on. So we have people who are under 65 become over 65 and can handle the internet. I think that we're going to have, for some time, a significant difficulty in communicating. And I think that we need to seriously address that. And I think that we as Prosperous Staffordshire ought to look at that in our work programme, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Just quickly, gentlemen, on the BD UK's survey or soft market testing. So what's next? They've said there's no cause for it. So where do we go next? Is the first one, and then the second thing I was just going to say, that we estimate that most households will soon have up to 200 devices accessing the internet. I think I've already surpassed that. My house is a Google house, so everything works on Google. Oh, my phone's just lit up as well. So everything's, all my light switches, I don't have keys to my house, it's all done on Google Locks. So I'm already probably over the 200, and that's just me. And I can't be the only person in Staffordshire that has Google devices, or what's the other one? Alexa, is it? So I think most of us will probably be there way before we think it. So that's just my 2 penneth worth on digital.
And don't forget the Ring doorbells as well, Chair, because everybody's having those, aren't they now? I think you're quite right on that sort of proliferation of devices, and that's why this strategy needs to roll out, you know, and also, as we say, get to those areas where there isn't a very poor connection. I think just going back to Councillor Hutton's comments, and also Councillor Smith touched on it, and it's that communication, isn't it, and getting the message out there. And I think we've revamped the online communications to do with this around the new website, and the revamp towards gigafast instead of the super fast rollout, and I think that's getting the message out about the vouchers, etc. But I think you're quite right. I think we can make members aware of the voucher scheme so they can spread it within their community. I think on that communication from what Councillor Smith talked about, I just saw something from recently from the BBC that they are you know, they're starting to roll back on their local news services on the local radio stations. They're going to become more regional. So that's another step away from local news. And I think that's something which we need people connected to the internet so they can see their local Lichfield Live, and they can see their Newcastle groups and their you know, Tamworth groups and their Lichfield groups. I think that's the way forward, and that is by getting everybody connected. On the issue to do with the smartphones, I don't think that reflects the actual people that are connected to the internet in other ways. I think my parents have got smartphones, both of them, and I don't think both of them really know how to use it. They'd rather just have a normal phone where they can just, you know, phone their grandchildren, speak to their kids, etc. They don't need all the added on you know, whistles and bells, do they? Flashing all the time. It just confuses people, and not necessarily of an older age. I think all ages, some people would like a simpler phone. So I don't think it's really you can connect that with the fact that people are connected. They're connected in different ways. Have broadband, have their Sky packages, and all of that. So I think it'd be interesting to see if officers have got any sort of comments on the issues to do with connectability across the board. But I think we're set fair for a policy, a strategy that we've got to push forward on this. I think all the elements are there to be able to push out this connectivity and this giga-fast connectivity that really builds on the rollout of Superfast, which was a real achievement for this council. But as we said at the last meeting and we said in the strategy, it's not about the county delivering this on the ground, it's about the private sector. And coming back to your point, Chair, about not being in the sort of the way for the BD UK, I have received an initial response to my letter where the local officer for BD UK wants to meet us and to discuss that. But as we said at the beginning, organically it's already happening without BD UK being the lead through the procurement on this. So I think there is the market is dictating this, and people want this faster connection, and they want to have all of those whistles and bells and those 200 connections, and they're already seeing the benefit of that, but also they're seeing obviously the effect on their speed of having all these devices, so they want faster speeds. So the market will provide, but that then leads to what the council over there said about coordination of digging up the roads as more of these services go in. So hopefully our strategy will help to give this a push forward, remove some of the barriers to people being connected, but also ensuring, I think, as the council said there, that the whole street scene doesn't go to pot in the process. But any comments on connectivity of particularly elderly people?
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Just to say, I suppose, broadly, and just pick up on the strategy first of all, I think when we brought the original strategy in summer, where we've got to now, and you can see the sort of pace of change around connectivity, I think it's really important. We've established the team and the resource now with Idris, and we've gone through a full recruitment process now. We've scaled up the team, and we've got that strategy to move forward with now. And you can see the level of interest. We talked about 17 different providers coming into the county. So to be able to respond to them and work with them to deal with some of the issues on the ground, such as highways, such as barrier busting, to basically try and deliver two things really. One is that greater connectivity for everyone as fast as possible, because you get the benefits and the return quickly, and people can take advantage of that. But also to be able to focus our efforts and our support on those areas where we're not going to get the connectivity and where we aren't going to see the commercial investment. And critically, that we've got to make the most of the government investment to be able to connect those areas that are going to be potentially left behind. So that's really important. And I think the sort of underpinning part of that is having all this connectivity is all very well and good, but like I say, if people are don't have the skills or the ability to use it, then it's really important from a social inclusion perspective to be able to provide training, awareness and knowledge for people to take advantage of the different technologies rather than, you know, one solution. So part of that broader social inclusion strategy and the skills strategy is something that we link into, as well as the broader county council approach, as we begin to try and address how people can take advantage of different ways or the technologies to get involved. The fibre infrastructure is one solution, and it won't be for everyone. There will be other technologies, and through things like 5G, and it's referred to in the report, using mobile communications, but primarily, and indeed satellite in the future, as we're seeing that come on. There will be different solutions available for people. So it is a twin track race, and one is getting the connectivity in, but two, about making sure we don't leave people behind in getting that connectivity as well.
David?
Chairman, I suppose really I'm looking at the great gap between what you're doing and the implications of that to the service that we give to the community. And I know it's not part of your remit, but I think that we ought to be providing a community news service as the councils within Staffordshire. Now, I don't know how practical that would be, but if you look at most of the people in my division think that Lichfield Live means it's the opposite to Lichfield Dead. So every day you wake up alive, no idea about internet services. We've got to address in some way, and the reason I'm asking you is, if we're looking at how we're going to improve our physical communications, how much is the current internet service and services that you provide capable of dealing with that? If we're looking to provide an automatic news service in the way that we get other news services to our phones, how practical is that likely to be within existing technology?
I think getting everybody connected to a fast internet connection helps them to receive all sorts of information, doesn't it? And that can be via websites, via apps, via news feeds, via Facebook, Twitter, and all the other different things which the county council operates on at all levels, doesn't it? I think whether we set up that's really out of the depth of my portfolio, whether we set up a news service or develop a news stream or something, which of course our website is developing all the time, isn't it, in that direction? But I think that's something for Ian Parry to talk about, because I think those side of things come under his portfolio.
Clarify that what we're saying is that the technology is there. It may possibly be the fund liability to communicate with the people that are resident within Staffordshire. And so I think it is a problem that we need to deal with.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions to the team? No? Okay, so we've got two recommendations: that we endorse the update and approach being taken, and we note the further areas of consideration and improvement being developed in support of the Council's overall digital first strategy. Happy to move those? That's unanimous, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. You're free to leave. Thank you for your time this morning. And we'll move swiftly on to item 7, which is our work programme. Mandy.
Thank you, Chair. Your next meeting is the 16th of December. If I can just run through the items that you're expecting. The Staffordshire History Centre report has, it's been postponed to the 3rd of February meeting. The Highways Transformation Progress and Performance Quarterly Update is still due to come to the meeting, as is the Electric Vehicle Charging Infrastructure Strategy, and also the Civil Parking Enforcement Scoping for a possible review.
Thank you very much. And as Mandy's just said, the date of the next meeting is Friday, the 16th of December. And I have asked for that meeting date, that meeting time that's listed at 10:30. It should read 10 o'clock. So if there are no further questions, David, what are you going to say? If it's about anything to do with climate change, don't say it.
Well, I was only just... I'm assuming that we are going to get a report on climate change.
It'll come. You need to speak to Samantha Thompson, who's the new chair. So that will.
Well, we needed
David, please stop. Please stop.
Chairman, I would also come on to the point that we've been talking about communications. Who is scrutinising communications? Because I think it should be this committee, and I think that we should have communications come to this committee for a discuss. It's a major item as far as we're concerned in Staffordshire, and nobody seems to be questioning what we're doing. And I do look forward to the climate change report coming to this committee.
Okay. Yeah. We'll look at communications when we go to the pre-meet. Graham, quickly.
We're talking about electric charging points, but hydrogen is going to be coming along within the next 2 or 3 years. And I don't think we as a county have actually even thought about any of the basics that we're going to have for this. And I was just, if we could send a message back to that team saying, we know you're looking at electric charging points and that's great, we've got a lot of electric cars, but when hydrogen comes along, particularly for commercial vehicles and buses, how are we as a council, not necessarily put in an infrastructure, but enable a commercial infrastructure to go in. I just think that we should be thinking about it now, not waiting for 3 years and then going, oh God, what are we going to do?
Yeah, we'll take that up with the team. Cheers. Okay, so that's well, yeah, save it for the meeting then. So the next meeting, as I said, 16th of December, and I'll close the meeting at 11:27. Thank you for your attendance today.